a protester can just walk over and just steal a police quadcopter. Where's the riot robots? You had 300 of them. This is a riot. Get the riot robots, you know?
Hi, folks. This is Louis Hertham, the original Peter Abernathy. Hell is empty and all the devils are here on the Shat on TV Westworld podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Westworld, the unofficial podcast companion piece to the hit HBO series Westworld. I'm one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Ashley Schafly.
Hi, y'all.
And this is our final Instacast edition for Season 3 of Westworld. It is our immediate thoughts after watching the explosive extended cut of the finale, Episode 8, titled Crisis Theory. And before we get started, I want to note this is the only Shat on TV edition that focuses on our personal feelings toward the episode. So there's been no time to process, no time to research, no time for a second watch, no interaction with the audience. This is just our immediate reactions. Feelings might be a little bit raw, but as a reminder, if you're looking for insights into the episode, that'll be in the deep dive on Tuesday. And if you want to hear other people's opinions, that'll be on Friday during the Telegraph. But this is our immediate reactions. Guys, what'd you think?
I think that my biggest takeaway from this are two words, which is holy guacamole, because of the amount of plot holes that were left in this fucking season, right? Because I feel like we watched maybe the penultimate episode just now. Like we watched something that was going to set up what the final episode was going to be, because there was not a whole lot of answers that were given to us. And I guess I'll just say this, totally loved Fight Club 2.0 ending. Thought that was, really great. Them standing on the bridge.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed the post-credit scene, which we'll get into in a second. But in general, I really felt like this was a total waste of a season. I feel like Serac, I feel like everything with Lena Waithe and those minor characters, everything that we learned wasn't actually useful, because now with the post credits, we're right back where we were at the end of season 2, where Dolores is pissed and is going to go kill all of humanity. And that's awesome. I'm here for that, because I was excited at the end of season 2 about that. But that literally was where we were 2 years ago and 8 episodes ago. So that's kind of what I was left feeling with. And who the fuck was in Berlin? I'm sorry. I know that's an extra question, but I'm just frustrated. I'm frustrated because I just don't feel like we got a lot of answers.
So, Ash, I agree with you on most of what you're saying. And as I'm watching the episode, I started to realize that the season was missing something. It was a lot of action. It was things going on, but it was missing those emotional stakes. We didn't know who the characters were, whose pearl is in whose body, who are they. The other problem I've harped on this recently is we don't know what it would take to lose a character. If you don't tell us if somebody's really dead or they're gone, at no part during these fight scenes am I worried. I'm like, oh shit, I don't really know who it is. I don't know if they can come back. And then we got that scene, which was, I think, the best one for me in the episode, is where Arnold / Bernard goes to see his ex-wife, or Arnold's ex-wife, the mother of his child. And Jeffrey Wright's amazing. He's crying. I'm feeling it. I'm like, oh my God, he's finally liberated of that guilt that he abandoned his family for the park, that it led to his son's death, and how he's haunted by it. And I was like, I'm missing that emotional development. I got more emotional about that than any of the loss of the characters, Hector, anybody else. And another problem I had was in these fights and interactions between Dolores and Maeve, it seemed a bit like actiony, like, hey, I'm going to beat you and you're going to win. That minute where Maeve goes into Dolores' head and they're standing under the tree and she's talking about how she saw the beauty in it. That was the first genuine conversation. I felt like there's Maeve, there's Dolores. And I was wondering, where was that?
Yeah, it could have happened at the end of episode 2, and we could have had a great rest of, the 6 episodes. Like, I felt like that was something that could have happened way before all of this. But I did really enjoy the scene in the wheat field or whatever. I guess maybe it wasn't wheat, whatever the field was. I thought that was really beautiful. But
I'm just thankful. I mean, Gene and I talked on Shappy Hour on Friday about what could be worst case scenarios. Thankfully, this was not a simulation. I think there was no big twist reveal at the end. It was a much more straightforward story than most people were like looking into or expecting. And I think that is a good thing. I think going forward, like Ash said, I was more pumped for the post-credit scenes. I was like, oh yes. We finally know who the antagonists will be in season 4. We've kind of laid the groundwork. And I think that's what was missing during the season.
That's right, Big D. In the Telegraph last week, in Shappy Hour on Friday, we said what would be an utter failure in Westworld Season 3's finale. And I think all of us agreed that those are the two things we didn't want. We didn't want a simulation, and we didn't want a cliffhanger, right? A cliffhanger that lasts for 2 years. It would be awful. And so I think it's safe to say that it wasn't the worst ending for the season. And there are some positives. Like, we got some concrete answers. So questions that people still had going into this finale. Is Serac a real person? Yeah, he is, and he can get stabbed. Is it a simulation? No, this is real life. Can the Dolores actually turn on one another? Yes, they absolutely can. And so we do have a pretty solid springboard for season 4. The world that we're in now is a world that is burning down like Westworld did. Humans are being freed like the hosts were. And almost like Ash said, it's a recycling of the tale of previous seasons, right? We're getting a reset essentially, but now it's for the real world. The stakes are higher. And this could be a show that tells itself in spirals like a maze, and that would be, acceptable. The other things we know is that a host army is being manufactured overseas. Caleb and Maeve are together in LA. It looks like their paths are aligned. William got. I think that was a really incredible thing for Leaf to post credits. Fucking the man in black got killed, and it's like a post-credit scene. Okay, cool. I'm with you, Big D, that surprisingly, my favorite scene in the entire episode, it had nothing to do with world domination or explosions or riots or supercomputers. It was just Bernard connecting with Lauren in the living room. This is when the show is at its best. I think some of those quiet moments are really what made this episode. And there is a lot of action to kind of balance it out. And it's not to say that the action scenes sucked. I thought that Dolores's gunplay scenes were better. They were improved. It was pretty good. There was still an incredible amount of people missing shots in with no cover at all, but we'll forgive that. I expected Dolores to come out of those fights with tons of bullet holes in her and looking more like the Terminator, but it's not my show to write. Which kind of brings me to the question though, guys. Like, we've talked about how we feel about the episode, but season overall, so we got 8 episodes this season of varying lengths. How does this one sit with the rest of them? Or is it your favorite? Is it close to it?
No, I mean, my favorite episode of the entire season was the first one, to be very honest. I thought that the season premiere, it had some really intense storytelling. It was successful in a way that a episode of television should be, for me at least, for my opinion, in the sense that it introduces us to a new world. I fell in love with that world immediately and understood a lot of it, but still had enough questions for it to be interesting. We met this new character in Caleb. I fell in love with him. I fell in love with the storyline. And I was super excited for Westworld to be back. I felt the things that Westworld makes me feel. I thought the action, I had that fuck yeah moment as well, as Big D says. I had all of that in episode 1. This one, I did feel a little bit of the emotional aspect of it, but not as much as I did with episode 1. It kind of started at a real high for me that they never quite got back to throughout the rest of the 7 episodes. Not that I didn't like them, but episode 1 was the big apex point for me.
I agree, Ash. I loved episode 1. We got some great world building. We got to see this amazing technology, the future. Everything seemed like this pristine world. And then that kind of fell off. I mean, they went from really focusing on it to some of these later episodes, you start questioning technology. You're like, what? A protester can just walk over and just steal a police quadcopter? Where's the riot robots? You had 300 of them. This is a riot. Get the riot robots, But for me, my favorite episode, I think it was episode 5, Genre. We get to see Serac's past. We get the birth of Solomon and Rehoboam. but mainly it was the music. It was the way it made me feel. The action scenes were good because it was done in a creative way. And then we got to see the release of the Incite data and how the world started to crumble. And for me, I think that was my favorite episode.
I mean, that would have been a season for me between the two of those things, episode 1 through episode 5, and I would have been happy right there. It could have just ended and it would have been fine. I'm torn, you guys. I think episode 5 was very, very strong, just slightly behind episode 1. And that might have just been that episode 1 was the feast after starving for 2 years. But the setting, the characters, the feel of the show, the soundtrack, the possibilities were all spectacular. Like you, Ash, I was just super excited for all the possibilities. And I know people have said podcast hosts get upset because the story's not going where they wanted it to. That's not the case here. I'm not complaining that the story didn't end the way I wanted it to. What I'm saying is episode 1 set a standard for storytelling, for emotional appeal, for a wow factor, just visually stunning us. And also these individual performances, like Big D said, the heart, the emotionality of it, that just wasn't there in other episodes, I think, except for episode 5, which was this perfect union of the music, the visuals, the storytelling, and really a world that was changing before our eyes. And it almost felt like episode 5 was more chaotic than these riots, which is kind of weird. Another thing that you might have noticed in the making of that they did after the episode, they were talking about how epic this riot scene was. It seemed like a really quiet riot to me. Like, think of like Strange Days riots versus these riots.
That is exactly what I was about to say, is like Strange Days had more of a riot scene than this did. And that riot scene lasted, all of 3 minutes in Strange Days. It wasn't even like a huge plot point because they just passed through to go to the party. And in this one, the riot was a whole episode long, and it felt a little kind of wah-wah, the riot itself. And the fight scenes, I know you guys said that you liked them, but even in this, like, I felt like the riot was slow, and I felt almost like some of the fight scenes were really, like, the choreography was really slow in them. I felt like a lot of this episode, and I don't mind episodes taking their time. I don't know. I just think there's a lot of questions to ask, which is actually what I want to talk about on the deep dive. I want to talk about that post-credit scene. I loved it. That last couple of minutes post-credits, I was more into that than I was into the entire episode, to be very honest with you. That's the Westworld I love, the intrigue and the action and the little bit of surprise, but enough of a straightforward sense, because they did not leave us with a cliffhanger. And I said that was one of my biggest fears, like you guys had talked about. And this was not a cliffhanger. We know what is happening with charred Dolores. We know what her plan is. And we also found out that the Man in Black wasn't a host. And that also put to rest a lot of tinfoil around the world. Got crumpled up tonight when they realized that the Man in Black now has there's a version of him that's a host. But I want to break down what we saw in that post-credit scene and where that leaves us for season 4, and to talk about in prep for that, what are these unanswered questions that we still have, and how is that going to play into season 4 when it comes out a year or 2, 3 years from now?
For me, I think one of my problems is, like you said, that the riot, they were very friendly. They were very courteous to each other. It didn't seem like people were hitting each other. And I think they described it in the little bit after the episode it was Burning Man. I thought they were like, hey, let's have fun. Woo! It's kind of like the riots in Scarface. If you watch what the people are doing in that Miami thing, they're just like play fighting. Nobody's really hitting each other. And I have a problem with some of the technology failings. And I want to go back and look and see if there's something I missed. Rehoboam is this great mind that can strategize and predict. I know, as somebody who works in IT, you don't just stick a USB into your network. Why would you plug Dolores into your network? So there's got to be something going on here. Incite owns Delos. So they own those 300 riot robots. Why didn't they just line up as a circle around the building? Why didn't you put some security? So I want to see, going back again, if there's something that I could have missed that explains these failings.
I think it might be that Rehoboam suddenly has a mind and a voice of its own, where it's like, okay, everybody, this is actually me, Rehoboam, talking. Attention, everyone, it's Rehoboam. Listen, plug me into Dolores. And they're like, no, we don't think it's a good idea. That's really against security program. Fuck you. Like, come on, I'm Rehoboam.
It was Ultron. It was a straight rip-off of Ultron, shot by shot. And then it's fine. Like, I get that everything influences before we get hate messages, I get that everything influences everything else. I understand that nothing is new again. I understand that everything is a tribute to something else. And that's fine. But I mean, come on, it was Ultron, right? Like, it was like they contacted Marvel. We're like, hey, can we can we get this? Because it wasn't a great Avengers movie, so let's make it better in Westworld. I mean, it kind of sucked.
Man, you don't even have to go to another property. Westworld season 2. You remember the attack on the control room with the red lights, the strobes, the gun battle, or the bull running through the hallway? That's what Maeve shootout was. I was like, I thought we've seen this.
Ash, you mentioned William kind of going on his post-credits killing spree. And I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but I think Big D probably remembers this, but there was a show back in the day called Sledgehammer, where he was like this cop with just a huge gun. Anyway, it was a comedy, but I could just imagine this spinoff. I would watch it where William just travels the world and he's cleaning up his own mess, right? So he just goes Delos location to Delos location, fucking shit up. I was like, that was the first time during the episode that I was legitimately entertained in a smiling way, not in a heartbroken way.
I'm a good guy. I'm the good guy. I'm going to save the world. Like, I totally get that. Like an 80s show, like that's the tagline. The man in black, here to save the world. And he was dressed in black again. It was perfect.
Yes. It makes me excited.
But there were some characters who kind of got short shrift this season. And I think that there was a payoff for them in this episode. I think Ed Harris got his thing. Jeffrey Wright. That's what I want to talk about for the deep dive. Jeffrey Wright done right. I mean, Bernard, after being neglected all season, finally gets some juicy moments. In particular, we actually got some flesh on his relationship with Stubbs. I kind of like those scenes. I was like, oh, that's cool. Like they're buddies. Stubbs is on ice. They're in this motel room. It felt, very buddy cop, as we said before, but in a good way. And then, of course, the Arnold that's still inside of Bernard connecting with Lauren, as Big D pointed out. And then also just that confirmation they had the key to the Sublime and what all is going on there. Those are all interesting points that I could really cling to, that I would want to chew on. And I found myself applauding Westworld, at least, for doing right by Jeffrey Wright and Ed Harris, finally.
Yeah, and that was actually the cliffhanger, and it's a cliffhanger I don't mind. With the last shot of Bernard and the hotel room with the worst housekeeping of all time, and he's sitting there all covered in dust and whatever else he's covered in, because it almost looks like pollen. But and then he wakes up. I mean, that also was really intriguing. I thought that was I know that was a cliffhanger, but it was a positive cliffhanger, and it was nice to see him being Bernard again. Right? I don't think we saw him be Bernard this season, except for in this last episode.
And we got a little bit of reverse valet mode again, like one final taste of him getting to kick ass. There was some slapping going on there.
I saw
it. Was weird.
Yes, well, you got to figure Ed Harris is an older man. You can't be punching him. So it was more like you're open-handed slapping and just shoving him to the ground. Yeah. But new host, Man in Black, he seems much more capable of whooping some ass.
All right, so lots of lows and highs coming off of this episode. Now, we are all going to go back and watch this again. I think there was a lot to digest in the, roughly 80 minutes that it ran. And I'm also very excited to see what the audience response is. So please write into us at host@shatontv.com or call 914-719-SHAT. You can also tweet at us at ShatOnTV. So we'd love to hear what you thought of it. I know that we can't be alone in our frustration, but I think that there's also some other viewpoints that I'd really love to hear from, things that we might have missed that were really quality points of the episode. So please go ahead and do that. Again, our deep dive is coming out on Tuesday. It'll be us researching into these topics and more. And then, of course, whatever you write in or call in with, unless you tell us expressly not to, might be shared in the Telegraph, which comes out on Friday. Also, if you missed it, Roger did a live Westworld live on Twitch. That was a chat that happened immediately after the episode. So you can check that out at shatontv.com/Twitch. So even if you missed it, you can still watch the replay of it and see what everyone else had to say about the episode. And that concludes this week's episode of Shat on TV Westworld Instacast. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat on TV. On Facebook, just search for Shat on TV Podcast. The website is shatontv.com. And again, you can email us at host@shatontv.com. Also on the website, coming up very, very soon, we will have the Westies, which is our way of honoring each season the best moments, characters, plot points, and production work done in Westworld. We come up with the nominees. You do the voting. So we'll have that link for you on the deep dive. So be sure to check that out, or just go ahead and check the website, or follow us on Twitter, and you can see about it there. Wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pandora, Spotify, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, Ashley Schafly, Roger Roper, and the King Bee, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us on Tuesday for our deep dive. covering the season 3 finale, Crisis Theory. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay the fuck at home.